Welcome to Cocktail History. I'm Stephanie Kibler, Executive Director here at the Freeborn County Historical Museum, Library and Village. Joining me is Risha Lilienthal, who is the Curator of Collections and Exhibits here at FCHM. Today we are delving into the Cosmopolitan. And it's interesting because when I started looking at this one, it says that sometimes cocktails have a cloudy past. Several folks lay claim to them, but not the Cosmo. The Cosmo can be credited to blah, blah, blah. Well, that's not true.
No.
Not true at all.
No.
It has a rather messy past, and there's several people who claim it. But the recipe first appeared in the book, Pioneers of Mixing at Elite Bars, 1903 to 1933. It was published in 1934. Toby, and I'm going to butcher this name. The name is Ceccini. Ceccini? I'm going with Ceccini.
Works for me.
And bartender Neil Murray both have laid claim to the Cosmo. Now, the 1934 Cosmo, which is what we're doing.
Right, because you said that range was to 33.
Yeah, but it was published in 1934, so they think that's why Ceccini named it the Cosmopolitan in 1934. I'm lying. It wasn't Ceccini that named it, but I believe it was Miles Davis that named it. Ceccini and bartender Neil Murray both claim to have created the Cosmo. Ceccini in 1975.
I heard that one.
And Murray in 1988.
Oh, that's even later.
Murray states that he added a splash of cranberry juice to a kamikaze, and one of the customers, the first taster, said, "How cosmopolitan!"
Oh,
and that's how he named that. But the biggest difference is the modern day one is with vodka.
We see that with a lot of the more modern ones. It has the vodka instead of the gin.
And that happened. Prohibition gin was readily available. Vodka was not. Although during Prohibition it was the bathtub gin. So I'm kind of surprised more of these drinks haven't gone back to their gin base, because now you get a really nice quality gin.
Sure.
So anyway, muddled past with the Cosmopolitan.
But we're not muddling.
We're not muddling. There is no muddling here. The drink gained its popularity back in 1998 with the HBO series Sex and the City.
Sure.
Carrie Bradshaw and her besties always went out and had Cosmos. So that's when it really got an uptick here again.
Sure.
Across the world. It's crazy to me that that's a show that's blowing up everywhere, not just here. But anyway, this was interesting though too. Neil Murray, the guy who said he did it in 1975, was a bartender at Cork and Cleaver Steakhouse in Minneapolis. So
okay, that was the 75.
That was the 75 one. Yep. Which was, I thought, was kind of a fun little tidbit because it's sort of local.
Yeah, close.
But let's mix.
Yes.
So, do we want to try to do 2 in 1 again? You need ice. Put some ice in.
Right.
And then we're going to add I don't know if we can do these. I think we might have to do these one at a time.
Okay.
It's 1.5 ounces of gin. That's a lot of ice for one. So it's 1.5 ounces of gin.
Okay.
And then it's going to be 1/2 ounce of Cointreau. And Cointreau is the orange liqueur. And you can garnish this with an orange peel or a lemon peel. We're going to use lemon today.
All right. How much of the?
1/2 ounce.
Oh, half. Almost at a full.
Nope, 1/2 ounce. Here comes the tricky one, because then it's 3/4 ounce of lemon juice.
Oh, we can do that. Maybe.
I know it's in the bowl, which is a little trickier, but I have faith in you. Don't shake. There you go. That's pretty good. I'm impressed.
Thank you.
And then you're gonna do a half an ounce of our raspberry syrup, which I put in the freezer and forgot about.
Because she made our simple syrup from scratch.
Yes.
So.
Which is a much better. It's so easy to do, and the flavor is so much better.
Did you say half?
Half an ounce.
Right. This is a little easier to pour from.
Yeah. So then you're gonna shake that up. And the modern day Cosmos also use cranberry juice.
Oh, nice.
We do have a collection item.
I know.
Watch that shaking. I just keep thinking it's a good thing that they can't see us head to toe. Because you've got your funky pants, I got my funky pants. We're like a clash. It's like, there's a lot going on here.
Just our plain up.
Just nice black tops. Just.
Ooh.
It's really pretty. And we did use some fun little pink glasses.
Woo.
Okay, so we're gonna, you wanna do a second one?
Yeah.
Okay. Start all over. Well, so while you do that, you remember the recipe?
I should.
1.5 of gin and half Cointreau. One of the things that I think is it's a phrase I like is how cosmopolitan of you.
Mm-hmm.
So I got curious, like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And I came up with several that were interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're gonna do 3/4 ounce lemon and half a Cointreau. But my favorite is that it encompasses 4 distinct overlapping perspectives.
Okay.
Inclusiveness, universal commitments, tolerance of differences, openness to other cultures, and socio-political analysis needs to take transnational developments into account, meaning global.
Sure. Yeah. Global. Very cosmopolitan.
Yes. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is, I'm going to start telling people I'm cosmopolitan.
That's good.
I loved that.
That's a nice moniker.
One of them also that was kind of neat, someone who is cosmopolitan has had a lot of contact with people and things from many different countries, and as a result is very open to different ideas and ways of doing things, which I feel like encompasses history, right?
Right.
When you look at the history we collect, we have Scandinavians, Latino,
Yep.
Asian, Bohemian, First American, African American. I feel like we're very cosmopolitan. It's gonna be my new word. People are gonna get sick of it. And so
That's
then,
a nice word.
once we do that, then we can do a little
Garnish.
in there.
I like the pink glasses too.
They make it a little pinker. It's really kind of a pretty little drink. And I see that you have a collection item.
I do, and I will get to
Oh,
it.
sorry. Okay, you're gonna start. I'm gonna move this out of the
Yes.
way since it's open container day.
Before we get to that, because I will end with that.
Okay.
So
Well,
I
sorry,
have a
I did
few-
not mean to jump
Few other
ahead.
things. So let's maybe just cheers so you can sip
Oh.
well.
So we can taste the Cosmopolitan 1934.
Yes.
It's more lemony than I anticipated.
I like the syrup though.
Yeah, I could almost have a little more. I'm not a sweet beverage drinker, but I could almost have a little more syrup.
A little more.
Oh,
Yes. But while you were talking about
that's
how
good.
very worldly, that's what I got from a lot of when I was looking at the Cosmopolitan is that people who have experienced the world and can bring back those experiences and travel and knowledge of different languages and
Right.
cultures and so the first person that came to my mind was Mr. and Mrs. Meehan,
Sure.
the lawyer and his wife, and
They would be
they
very
were
cosmopolitan.
He wrote a couple of years in his journal in German,
Yeah.
so he knew languages. They traveled to several places in the world. But then I also was thinking about Helmer Myrie a little bit because he was the lightweight wrestling champion of the world.
That's
In
right.
1921. So he had a little bit of world experience and was on the world stage. And he also was the sheriff in that 1937 strike at American Gas Company. And,
Where we have the strike ball on display.
right, yeah, the little porcelain ball that they used
It's
to
very
throw through
cool. If you haven't
windows.
seen it, it's like very cool.
It is, yes. But then that company too also distributed to the world, so that was a very worldly company. But it changed a lot of hands too, and all of them,
Yes.
even within those
Yes.
changes, like still were distributing to the world. So it started with Gas Hansen.
Yes.
1894, which he was actually Hans C. Hansen.
Gas was his nickname.
Right. Started the American Gas Company because he was a tinkerer. He was tinkering around.
Tinkerer.
And then there was somebody who worked there who broke off. He was a secretary, and his name was Soren K. Swenson, and he became the president of the Albert Lee Gas Company in 1910, which was separate from the American Gas Company.
Gas.
And Meehan, who I just mentioned a little bit before, he was the president of that company.
Freeborn?
The
Albert Lee, I mean?
Yep,
Albert
Albert
Lee
Lee
Gas?
Light Company.
Albert Lee Light Company.
Yep, so that was the shoot off of the American Gas Machine Company. And then he changed their name to the Bright Light Company in 1914. And then they merged with the American Gas Machine Company. They merged back in
Yeah.
1920, which is also when Scotsman came to Albert Lee, started in Albert Lee. And which will come back to them. But they were their own company.
Yeah.
And then Queen's Stove Works was founded by somebody else who was working at the American Gas Machine Company. He was a sales manager, and he made his own company, the Queen Stove, and that was pressure fuel camp stove. So he just did a whole offshoot and separated from that. And then we had that strike in 1937 that happened, and after that, American Gas Machine Company itself kind of was struggling.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until the 1950s that offshoot, Queen Stoves,
Broke away?
No, took
over.
Yeah,
Took
yeah,
over
they
American
took American
Gas.
Gas Company.
Okay.
And that's when the Scotsman name was on their ice machines. So they were working with them and distributing together. And then in 57, the King Sealy Corporation came in and acquired the Queen Stove. So that's when it came out of like the founders of people who were here in Albert Lee. It went to the King Sealy Corporation, and then they changed names a couple of times too throughout the years. And but in 1967 is when they really began really using the Scotsman name. So they had taken like Scotsman ice machines and were using that, but it wasn't until 67 that they started using it on
the machines.
And so that is when Scotsman broke into the worldwide market. That's what they credit to that time.
And I'm just going to throw a shout out because one of our board members is a former Scotsman salesman.
Yes. Named.
Well, I didn't know if he wanted me to throw his name out there.
Okay. Well, he's super sweet though.
He is.
like him. But then it also changed names again after
We
that.
like all our board members.
What?
We like all our
I
board
know that's
members.
true. But in 1988 is when Scotsman finally closed in Albert Lee. So that's about 100 years of that whole, starting with American Gas Machine to Scotsman, kind of changing, and throughout all of it, they were distributing to the world. They were a very cosmopolitan company.
And I don't know if this applies, but to me this is forward thinking on their part, American Gas's part, because when they were located with downtown Albert Lake,
Yes.
They actually built a garage for bicycles, so their workers had a place to park their bicycles.
That's nice.
Yes.
That is forward thinking.
Uh-huh.
How
Very
cosmopolitan.
cosmopolitan.
But also, I was thinking about the magazine, Cosmopolitan, the Cosmo.
Sure.
Um,
And all the quizzes.
I don't know.
Cosmopolitan used to be famous for their quizzes.
Really?
You taken the quiz in Cosmo yet?
I did not know that.
Yes.
Their first issue was in 1886.
Oh wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, so they were an early magazine, and they still running. To this day, they have 64 international editions. So they distribute worldly. They themselves are cosmopolitan. But that got me to thinking about how we have a lot of magazines in our collection. We have magazines because it has a lot of really good information. Sometimes they have history in there. And it's just something that is a part of history, magazines. But when I looked it up on Past Perfect, this came up.
Okay, and I'm curious, how does that fit in with a magazine?
So this is a calfskin covered trunk.
Right. Which I wish people could see it, because you still can see.
Furry.
Yeah.
Yes, it was made around 1826. And it was for sure specifically used in 1828 by a Mrs. Partridge. And she and her family was a part of the Culkins, was who her descendants later married into the Culkins. And the Partridge family was one of the first 12 families that moved to this area. And they had this trunk up until 1959 when they donated it.
Gifted it here? Yeah.
So they had it for over 100 and about 30 years in their family. And this trunk inside here, I'm gonna maybe just get my hands a little.
Wash your hands and you put your gloves on.
Yeah.
Or use your little gloves.
Yeah.
Nitrile gloves, I believe, is what you have.
Nitrile. Yep. A little bit of a clean to touch this.
And maybe while you're putting your gloves on, explain to everybody why we use gloves on these objects.
So a lot of it has to do with the oil on our hands, and that can transfer over into and onto our items or anything else that might be on my hands, even though I wash
lotions
them.
A lot of times.
Soap can even. So it's something that just keeps them as safe as possible. It
prevents them from breaking down faster.
Yep, it's just a care. It's a care thing. Yeah, it's protection. So I'm gonna go ahead and lift it. I don't know how well you're gonna be able to see it inside, but in here there's paper.
Looks like newspapers.
It's from a magazine though.
It's magazine pages.
Magazine pages that are lined. Which the note that came in with this by the family mentioned that it says that it is from the American Mercury magazine dated 1826.
Okay.
However, when you do a little bit of sleuthing, the American Mercury magazines date from 1924 to 1981.
Wow.
So it's likely that they were printing something that was said in 1826. So they had that date on there, but this trunk was relined later on. So that's one of the things when we get items, we still have to do some double checking on some things because there's assumptions that are made.
Ask a lot of questions.
And use our resources like our librarian.
Right. I'm going to just reiterate this because it's very important when you're going to contribute an item here that you come in, you fill out a piece of paper.
Yes.
When you leave it at our doorstop or shove it into a mailbox,
we have no idea where it's from.
And it cannot get put into the collection if that's the case. So typically those items don't even stay here. And my gosh, the fear is one of them is going to have a great story like that, right?
Exactly. We want to know the story so that we can keep it and tell it.
And share it.
It's so cool.
Yes.
But yeah, that was the...
And we have this out on display, I believe.
We do. It is in our settling in Freeborn County, so it's all about our immigration and people coming to Freeborn County. So this trunk was made in Connecticut, and they brought it over when they moved up, one of the first 12 families in the area.
That's one of my favorite exhibits.
That's cool.
Just really like it's got a lot of statistical information on the posters, but the clothing is so detailed, and in addition to this trunk, there's a really beautiful, I want to say decoupage. It's not decoupage. It's
embroidered?
No, rose mold.
Oh,
It's got rose molding on it. Big trunk that
yes,
came.
the
Yeah,
trunk, yes.
yeah, it's one of my favorites.
It's beautiful. And I think I know why it might be one of your favorite exhibits.
Why?
Because it's very cosmopolitan.
It is very cosmopolitan. Yes, it is very cosmopolitan.
That's your new word.
It is going to be my new word. I'm gonna. Next time anybody stops in here, I'm gonna say, "Oh, how cosmopolitan of you." Or that's not very cosmopolitan of you.
That's an insult.
Oh my goodness sakes. On that note, cheers.